Hello, this is another edition of the Raw and Unedited Show. This is the place where we give you tips, tactics, and solutions, in particular for association executives like you. Hi, my name is Ed Rigsbee. I'm your host. Have you ever wondered, my gosh, how could I get 100% of the market share? How could I get all of the potential people as members into my organization? Most people say it's impossible. Well, I'm here this morning with Tim Jackson from the Colorado Automobile Dealers Association, and he's been the CEO there for a long time. And you know something? He's got 100%. Tim, welcome to the show.
Hello, Ed. Thanks for the opportunity to be on.
Absolutely. So, Tim, everybody wants to know, okay, I've got 50% of my market, I've got 60% of my market, I've got 70 or 80. How in the world do you have 100? Could you share with us how that happened?
Sure, and I think Ed, it's a unique situation. I think in a way, um, I think it's a combination of things, really. And first and foremost, and this plays to our advantage on having 100%. We're a very niche industry from a standpoint of our members are franchise new car dealers that have a franchise agreement with an automaker and operate in the state of Colorado. The so Our universe is of those qualified new car dealers. Our universe is 260 right now, and that's how many we have that are members. But there are a few things, and I'd love to get into them with you that play to that. And one of those is due structure. So how much, what is the threshold? What is the barrier of entry, if you will? And in this case, fairly low barrier of entry because we have 100%. And then there are situations that there are a few rules that apply that enable that help encourage full participation. In case in point, some of the owners that we have that own dealerships in Colorado or nationwide, and you'll have this, I think, in a lot of other industries as well. But the owners may own more than one, sometimes 5, sometimes as many as 8 or 10 or even 20 different operations. And in our industry, Ed, we call them rooftops. So the rooftop is each individual location where a dealership exists. If it's a complex and there's multiple dealerships on next to each other, then we count each rooftop. And so our memberships are for the rooftops. But about 10 years ago, in fact, to be more precise, I think 11 now or 12 years ago, in 2007, 2008, we went through a little bit of a restructuring on our dues structure. And one of the changes, and we made it much more relative to volume. So the volume of each member dealer determines how much their dues actually are. Therefore, a dealer that is, let's say, more successful, higher volume, has more throughput, has more traffic, has more revenue, their dues will be higher. And it's based on previous year sales, and there are data sources where we can access that data. The other thing, when we were evolving to that and basing it on actual volume without a cap, and really without a floor, there is a floor, but it's a very low floor, but without a cap, our leadership recognized that some may say, well, I'm a member in this store. I don't need to be a member in that store. I'm a member over here, but I don't need to be a member over there. So, and if everything is factored on as far as budgets and anticipation on all dealers participating, that would throw it out of sync, right? Because then a dealership with 20 stores instead of one would have an unfair advantage on dues. Pardon me. So we instituted at that time a rule that basically says it's all in or all out. So you don't have to be a member. We can't hold a gun to their head or anything that way, and we don't. Um, but if you're going to be a member in one store, you have to be a member in all stores. We haven't had very many times, Ed, that has had to be enforced, but we have had a couple of instances that it has. And in the times we did, we gave them that let's call it the ultimate ultimatum. They opted to be in versus be out.
So Tim, on this all in or all out type of thing, that's very fascinating. If somebody decides to be all out rather than all in, what price would they pay? What would it cost them not to be in?
Well, they wouldn't pay any dues then, right?
I understand, but I mean, it's cost as far as the value to the dealership and various things.
Well, if I understand your question, and I mean, if they're not in, they're not paying any dues, then certain things that we do as services for member dealers, frankly, we don't have to, right now, because we have 100% participation, we don't have to price those products. But in that case, we probably would have to price the products. So things like the services we provide, and there's a lot of services. And key to all of this, I think, Ed, and you and I have talked a little bit about this in the past, but dues still today, even though they're twice what they were a dozen years ago, they're twice what they were when we went to this new, instituted this new plan. But they're still relatively low. And when I say relatively low, they are membership dues make up less than 15% of our total association revenues. And it's, truth be told, it's probably closer to 12%. So that barrier of entry is what I would call very low.
Well, maybe this is a good time to talk more about that, because one of the things in the past that we've talked about is your the publishing company you bought, or I shouldn't say you, I guess the association bought, and I was very fascinated about that, and I realized that that's a very unique thing. Not every industry can do that. However, you did something that was very forward thinking, and took a risk, and not everybody's willing to do that. And so, in looking at dues, non-dues revenue, I mean, a lot of people are looking at 40, 50% of their total revenue being non-dues, but you're looking at 85+% being non-dues. So tell me a little bit about, tell our viewers a little bit about what you did on the publishing side.
Sure. It's a really interesting story, and it's kind of a long story, and I'll try to make it short. Our industry is specific to our industry are the need for unique forms for sales transactions. So, and some of those are what in governmental policy terms are called secured forms. So a secured form is one that the state of Colorado mandates be used on every transaction. And then they go out and put it out for bid, and companies bid and provide those forms. And then the dealers have to buy them from one of the providers, forms providers. We as an association have always been one of those forms providers. The association here, by the way, is 105 years old. So it's been around a long time and providing forms and those type services for a long time. So one of those forms, and now this is not a secured form, but is a required form. It's called a retail installment sales contract. Don't want to get too much into industry jargon, but that's what it is, a retail sales installment contract. So it's how you're paying for a car if you finance it. And it becomes the document, let's say the living document between the sale of that car and the financing of it to the consumer and the lender who buys the loan that the dealer sold. And So those forms for many years in Colorado were produced by a company called Rocky Mountain Banknotes. And Rocky Mountain Banknotes, and your viewers may have never heard of it, the company, but it was based just a few blocks from our office, a few blocks from downtown Denver and close to the state capitol. And they own the Rocky Mountain Banknotes form and a lot of other forms. And in fact, they were a competitor back in the day to the companies like Harlan and Deluxe Checks. So they were a mass check producer. But they got out of that business and stayed with other niche businesses, including automotive forms. So then Bradford Publishing, which was a major publishing company in Colorado, ultimately bought out Rocky Mountain Banknotes. And oh, by the way, a little bit of history here, Ed. Just 8 blocks from our office is a building that still stands and still used today. It's an incubator office building where somebody just starting their business can go in and rent desk space. And it's called Galvanize is the name of the company. And on that outside of Galvanize, it still says today Rocky Mountain Banknotes. So
really?
it was a historical unit. And so Bradford Publishing bought Rocky Mountain Banknotes. Bradford, a family-owned Colorado-based publishing company that we did business with, and we basically retailed their forms. So we bought their forms and sold them to dealers. And then over the years, they at one time was the largest publishing company in Colorado. But they had declined from that, as a lot of forms have gone online, of course. And so we ultimately, when they were the principals of the company were about ready to retire, we had the opportunity to either pass on it or buy it, and we ended up buying it. We did that in March 15 of 2016, and we did it with a pro forma that it would pay it, that purchase would pay itself off in between 3 and 4 years. It's on track still to pay itself off in 3 years.
Wow.
So it's been a good investment.
That's pretty incredible. That's amazing. So is having that form compelling dealers? I shouldn't use the word compelling because that would be illegal, but urging dealers to be part of the association. So I guess here's the question. You know, you say there's a lot of reasons why you have 100% of your membership. Maybe you could prioritize, say, you know, as an example, and I don't know what the answer is. I'm just, you know, reason 1 is because of our due structure. Reason 2 is because of our forms. Reason 3 is because of advocacy. You know, if you had to lay it out, you know,
Sure.
and again, you know, just top of mind, you know, what do you think is the most compelling reason that you have 100%, and maybe work your way down from there?
Sure, and it's a fair question, and I fully understand that question. You know, primarily we are an advocacy organization, so you listed in the possibles there and mentioned it as a possible number 3. It is a solid number 1, and our dealers know that they need representation in the halls of the Capitol and before state regulatory and administrative agencies. And we are that voice for our members in all of those scenarios. And in a lot of those scenarios, we actually bring our member dealers into those meetings, especially if it's a conversation and it's educational and informative. We want to get the facts from the source, so to speak. So we'll invite our dealers into those, and then we systematically. And by the way, we've over the years been very successful, I think, in advocacy. There are some key things that we put in law that benefit our members and benefit consumers, benefit the public, benefit the state. Some we've actually been able to quantify, and in quantifying, say, top 3 or 4 legislative victories, they literally add up to more than $2 million a year per member dealer in benefit.
Really?
Yeah. And one adds up to $786,000 on average per rooftop. Some as high as $2 million, some as low as $200,000, depending on volume. Some others have accumulated to $2 to $3 million in just one action. And so it's very important to our member dealers that we're there in their voice in those fights and in that process. Sometimes it's not always fights, but sometimes it is. And and so we are their voice, we are their representation, we are their front, if you will, and their foil in the process. And so it's very important that we are in that role, and our members realize that. But like our members, like a lot of other association members, may in the day-to-day running of their business, it's not like they wake up and say, "Oh my God, what did my association do for me today?" But
Sure.
we did really go get them a really big win, or maybe just we defended a win that we won for them back in 1952, but kept it in place going forward. And so we're, you could say, vital to them from a process standpoint, because there's so many intricacies to the franchise system, and so we're vital to them in the process. So I would say, without a doubt, advocacy is number one. Then everything else falls behind that. At some point, some of those will include education and information. Some will include communications. Some will include access to the forms that we described earlier. Some will include access to bonds. They have to be bonded to be a member, or to be a dealer in Colorado, and each of their salespeople have to be bonded. So we provide the bonds for those, and it makes up probably 6 to 8% of our total revenues is selling those bonds and providing those bonds and doing it in a timely manner. So so those are all things that we do, and our dealers come to rely on us for.
So Tim, back on the advocacy for a minute. You know, I have a lot of people, a lot of association executives like yourself ask me about, you know, hey, how do we deal with, and I know freeloaders isn't the best term, but, you know, let's just use the term, you know, how do we deal with the freeloaders? And okay, so here's a situation where you, like many other associations out there, do a lot of advocacy work, create a lot of value, but you're able to keep the members. Now I'm thinking, and I won't mention any names, but I can think of a half a dozen California associations I've worked with that, you know, they do a lot of advocacy, but they can't keep their members. So why is it that your organization can't?
Well, that's a $64 million question, I think, as they say. Maybe it's a $64 billion question. Let me go back to two things we've talked about and kind of tie them together. One is that advocacy is really important, and our members do recognize that. The dealers that are making the decision to be a member or not be a member, they can recognize that. And secondly, that we talked about is how low the dues are compared to our overall budget.
Okay.
So the barrier of entry is very low and the value is very high. So it makes that, I guess it makes that equation a no-brainer, so to speak. The member value equation.
So just, you know, just off the top of your head, you know, let's say for every dollar a member invests in, you know, Colorado Automobile Dealers Association, what's your guess? How many dollars in value do they get back?
I love that question, and that's really central to everything we do. I was at a meeting with my peers last week, and one of the things that came up, and I brought it up, was how do we communicate the value that we deliver? Number one, and it really, that's number two. Number one is, how do we calculate and determine what that value is? In other words, we need to know it. We need to know, as an association, how much good we're doing for each of our members, right? So that's when, and with them in the room and me at the table and everybody at the table, really, in a hollow square in a hotel meeting room, I went back to numbers that are published in our progress report, our annual report, and said, okay, well, each dealer gets this much value on this win, this much value on average in this win, this much value on this win. go one more and take a fourth one, which was much less than the other three. Let's add those four up. And that's what came up to $2 million per year. And oh, by the way, and I think it's important because um, some might say, well, is some of that fluff? Is some of that, like, would it be really that much? Well, at least one of them in there could be twice or three times as much in other negative impacts. So we're just talking the actual tangible dollar value. And I think that's key to the discussion too. But anyway, I ran through the numbers because these were all topics that other state associations are dealing with as well. I ran through the numbers, said this is what it is individually, this is what it is collectively. And so let's add them up, and it came out to $2 million per year. And then on average, our dues are just $1,800 per year.
So Tim, I'm still fascinated with the respect that because whether a member, whether an automobile dealership in Denver, I'm in Colorado, sorry, is a member or not, they're still going to get that value. So the thing that fascinates me, and I'm so impressed with, is, while the advocacy dollars are massive, I mean, I don't think anybody would argue that they're massive. And most logical thinking dealers would want to support the industry to help make sure that they keep it that way. However, not all industries are that way. And there are people that just kind of want to freeload on what the industry does. So I get back to wondering, I still trying to understand, why do you have all of them? I mean, there's nobody that out there that wants to freeload. There's got to be more than just advocacy that holds them to the organization, that makes them want to be part of it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, that's, I guess, since we have all of them, we'd be arguing the hypothetical if we didn't, right? But I do totally, and I think it's the probably the most central question to association management today is how do you determine what that member value equation is, and then once you determine it, and presuming and assuming, if we can do that, assume here, and you know what that means, that everybody can put a dollar amount that, hey, we're making or saving, and that's what we're doing on that $2 million. We're making and or saving each of our members $2 million a year. So then, how do we communicate it? And to me, that's where our challenge has been in and not on this because we have 100%, but in fact, the discussions in that meeting that I was telling you about evolved to, yes, they're all members, and all of our member counterpart associations, if they're not at 100%, they're at 95 or 96% or 97. So they're all doing really good on the member penetration. But let's take this to a higher level. Okay. And how do we move that member, those 260 for us, or 1,500 if it's in California, how do we move that member from the B box, let's say inactive box, to the A box, the active box? Can I tell you a quick story, and I think you'll be fascinated with this?
Yeah.
One of our member dealers, I told you the association's 105 years old. And a lot of those are multi-generational dealers. One of those is a fourth generation Ford dealership in the Denver market that literally started in 1913. So if we're 105 years old, they're 106 years old because they started a year before the association did. And for when I arrived, almost 90 years later, it was 90 years later, they were still a single point membership. So it wasn't multi-store. Now it is a little bit multi-store because they finally, in the fourth generation, have added 2 other stores on the same street, 2 other dealerships who are also members. But every year we go out and we do a little, what we call a dog and pony, or some might call a dog and pony show. We call them regional meetings around the state, where we take a 2-hour meeting and a 2-hour presentation and take it around the state to every community that has, let's say, 3 to 5 or more of our members. and we'll do a 2-hour show. We'll do it either as a breakfast or a lunch or a dinner. We'll go to places like Durango, Montrose, Green Junction, Wynwood Springs. I won't bore you with all the communities in Colorado, but a lot of them. And then invite our members in. On that, we get about 70 to 75% participation.
Wow.
Dealerships or dealerships groups coming and attending the meeting. But that Ford story that I was telling you about, the third generation of that, who's very active and he'll call whenever there's an issue. I had never seen him at a member meeting. I'd never seen him at a convention. I'd never seen him at a regional meeting. I'd never seen him at an educational seminar. And not only did he come this year, and this was about 5 weeks ago, he brought his wife, who does advertising for their business, and he brought a senior manager who's the operations manager, and he brought his manager's son, who's they're grooming to be a dealership manager. And so now we've never had any. Now we have 4. And at the end of the meeting, he said, "Well, I've got to be more active." And another thing we do is legislative grassroots meetings, where we do member dealers around the table with a legislator, a policymaker, in the policymaker's hometown over breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And he says, I heard you have one of those coming up tomorrow. Is it too late for me to come to that? No, you can't. So he came to the one the next day. Then we had another the next day, and he came to the one the next day. And then we had a meeting at the Capitol the next day, and he came to the Capitol the next day. So we literally, through that regional meeting, which became a vehicle, no pun intended here, a vehicle for communicating value, the association value. Now we have literally, I would say, and I think you would probably agree, we've moved a member from the B box to the A box in activation activities. And you know, well, I'd love to answer if the question is, how did we finally get him to the meeting? Because it sounded like that's all we had to do was get him to the meeting. And well, that's a good question, because we never got him to the meeting before.
Well, you know, Tim, as I'm listening to you, you know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like you've got this amazing evangelist in training. and it's almost like, man, if I were your coach, I'd be telling you, get this guy on video talking about how come for the last 50 years or 90 years or 100 years, whatever it is, his family never participated physically. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, he's gone crazy. You know, how did he see the light? You know, did God come down and touch him on the shoulder and say, it's time? You know, what happened? And that would just be, I mean, get that thing done, edit it down, and you could have an amazing testimonial, you know, and why others, and hell, that should be on the homepage of your website. Anyway, that's just my thought, you know. Well, but go ahead.
No, and I agree, by the way, and I don't want to interrupt, but I agree, and I wondered what you think of that. I'm glad I brought that up, because it does fit into this, obviously. And now he's very passionate. He's going to be involved in our federal PAC. He's going to be involved in our state legislative efforts, and on and on. So he's definitely moved from A box to B box to A box.
And see, Tim, here's the interesting thing. I mean, as you research and try to understand and have conversations with this guy, what was the linchpin? You know, what happened? What made him make that new choice from just saying, I don't care, to I really care. And it's almost like, you know, when you figure that out, you can bottle it and put it out throughout the state. And
yeah.
But did you ask him that? Did you ask him why? You know, I mean, you don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, but
right. Well, no, in our legislative report, although it's new every year, and of course, and it has new issues every year, but there are threats that we point out, and we say, this is a threat upon us, and here's why, upon you, and here's why, and here's what the association's doing, and here's where the association's at, and this is the association's role, and this is what we're doing on your behalf. And then the old adage, and I know we've all heard, can you help us help you in this? And let's show you how you can help us. You can be a part of the PAC. You can be a part of the legislative grassroots meetings. You can be a part of the conversation. You can be a part of our face with policymakers.
No, I get that. I get that. You know something? Last Saturday, I ended up joining a new California association that I really knew a little bit about, but never had an interest in joining. But they're doing a lot of advocacy work in an area that I care about. So I wrote the check, gave them the money. So yeah, it's interesting how things happen, and you know, it's sure you have 100% of the members, and then obviously, you know, your next question becomes, how do I get 100% participation? Which, you know, you don't know if you're ever going to get that, but there's something with this guy. I just would say that there's something with this guy, that he's an evangelist, and something, there was a linchpin, something happened, something clicked in his head, and boy, Tim, I tell you, you find that out and you start sharing that with your entire group. And I would say anybody else, you know, that's watching the show, that it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, you know, when that's such a gift, it's just such a gift that when somebody's been a long time member and all of a sudden they wake up, that's just a huge gift.
They're enlightened. No, and I guess it's what we all look for, because if you're with an association that's only at 30, 40, or 50% or 60 or 70% penetration on members, you want to get them as members.
Sure.
But if you're at the 90% or above, or 95% or above, then it's that moving them from B box to A box, and that's just one way of putting it, and I've heard it put that way. But move them from inactive to active,
Sure.
and develop the energy, and then channel the energy. And I think what I hear you saying, and I think we can agree, what we did on that meeting was we developed the energy, and then the rest of the week we were captivating the energy, because we saw him 3 or 4 times later that week. He very interested.
Question on that. This traveling information show that you're doing, have you been doing that for a while, or is that something new?
We have, and a lot of our counterpart associations do those. They're a lot of work, as you might imagine.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We do them for free, so we don't charge a registration fee. And it's like, okay, at a minimum, you're going to get to come to a regional meeting, and we have dealers and members in Durango, which is a 7-hour drive, about a 1.5-hour flight. It's like the longest distance from where the association's at in the state. And I'll say, well, you know, that was 350 miles to get to you, and I'm glad to be here. And I'll have one of my members down there, and if I've heard him say it once, he's said it to me 20 times. He'll say, well, Tim, you know that it takes us just as long to get to you as it did for you to get to us. And I said, and his name's Pat, by the way. I say, Pat, I know that. Sometimes I'll just bring it up to him. I know it takes as long as for you to get to us as for us to get to you, but it was 350 miles. It was 7 hours down here, and for a 1.5 or 2 hour meeting. But at least he goes to that. Now, we'll have, and this is the frustrating part, in that area, there's just, our universe is 6, but we'll have 5 of the 6 that will pretty dependably come to that, one that will dependably not come to it. So, you know, we do need to find the way to move that dealer from that member from B box to A box, without a doubt. And so that's what we're always on a mission to do.
Yeah.
And
have you ever asked the dealer, that the one that doesn't come, why he or she doesn't come?
Well, in so many ways, I tried. You know, it's a good question too.
Pick up the phone.
Yeah. I try not to put them on the spot. One of the things I've said in the past to some of our members, I'll say, well, I hope you can come to that meeting. I'd really like to see you get active in the association.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a throwback. They're like almost offended. Oh, active in the association. Tim, I've been a member in the association as long as I've been in this business. If it's 30 years, it's 30 years. If it's 50 years, it's 50 years. What do you mean not active? Well, so they view as active if you're writing the check for the dues, right?
Son of a gun. Okay. Yeah. No, that's interesting. So it's so you've got this this double-edged sword in keeping the longtime members, let's say, pacified, that you appreciate their membership dues, yet at the same time getting them to show their face once in a while.
We're doing a TV broadcast. So sorry about that. Sorry
Oh,
about
no, I was just saying that it's funny. This is raw and then edited. It all stays in. No, what I was going to say is that, I'm thinking of the interesting challenge that you have that, okay, long-term members that have been, paying their dues for years and years and years that feel active, how do we not insult them by saying getting active? But I would almost ask you, gosh, is there another term that we could use besides, I'd love to see you get active? Like,
well, I was thinking of that when we were talking through that. How about actively engaged? I mean, it's adding another adjective onto the descriptor.
But
I'd like to get you actively engaged, because ultimately that's what we want to do, is get them actively engaged in the association.
Well, or, maybe even a softer tact. It's like, let's say the person's name's John. John, whenever we see your face, at any of our meetings, we really appreciate it.
Well, you'll appreciate it, or we'll appreciate it?
Will. So in other words, I'm thinking, and I'm just thinking out loud right now, but I'm thinking rather than saying, John, we want to get you actively engaged. It's like, and then you're kind of telling John you want something from him. However, I'm kind of thinking from the other side, hey, John, God, when you show up, we so appreciate it. So, it's kind of making somebody feel good and not saying that they're not doing something.
Right.
But saying that.
Because that can get you in trouble.
Yeah.
Right.
Saying when they do something, wow, we really appreciate it.
Well, no, and I think that is really key. And I think we have to avoid, and that's what I'm focus on the positive instead of the negative, right?
Yeah.
I think we have to avoid focusing on the negative, or in some cases, even bring up the negative. One thing, and I do a lot of personalized note cards, and I know you've heard stories on personalized note cards. I've got them on the shelf up behind me. I'd show you one, but I buy them literally 5,000 at a time, and that's becomes probably.
Grab one and show it on the screen. What the heck? I'm going to cut out kind of Tim. I'm thinking that people watching this go, okay, no card, but let me see it. Let me see what it looks like.
So we do these. These are from me, and we have some that are more general. But it says, I'll put it up close enough to the camera that you can see it. It has the association name and logo, and then my name here at the bottom.
Okay.
And of course, blank on the back, on the inside. And I write it in on that, whatever we write in. And I can give you a trade secret here in just a minute, too, that would be beneficial to your viewers. But we also have other projects. Like we host an Innovative Dealer Summit for members and others in the industry in conjunction with our Denver Auto Show. And sometimes we're sending a note card to people that participated in that. And then because sometimes it's we're just putting an insert in another package that we're sending. Maybe it's a past officers award or past directors award. And then we just have the flat note card. Also has the name, if I can put that up there, and the logo and the name.
Got it. Yeah, I see. Okay.
And then we also have these. These have worked so well. I mean, I'm in my 20th plus year of doing these. We do a note card because we are an advocacy organization. If somebody's in the news, so it says right on the cover of the card, in the news. It looks like newspaper copy.
Okay.
So we do a news clipping on the inside of the card. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but it's embedded in the inside as a background is news stories. So for our industry, lawmakers expected to scrutinize, Toyota bumps something, green vehicles garnered GM a delivery, and so anyway, it's just background noise, if you want to call it that. And then but you write on it, and I'll write on this one real quick here.
Tim, is it kind of like watermark? I mean,
yeah, it is.
Kind of watermark.
and hopefully you can see the high ed on there.
Okay, yeah, I do. I do.
So we buy those 5,000 at a time and deliver them to legislators, and legislators being policymakers and, let's say, elected leaders, are in the news all the time, right? So we will deliver 150 to 200 of those to the Colorado Capitol every week. The legislature's in session now. Our session's about 4 months long, so it's about 16 weeks. And so we're making 16 trips to the Capitol with the news clippings from the previous week for legislators. Now, how that works?
Tim, mail these. You hand carry these?
We hand carry them and put them in their mail slots at the Capitol.
Oh, okay, okay.
So it's like getting them in the mail, but we do it without a postage stamp and without having to go through extra security and all that.
Okay.
So we have literally had legislators, after they've served 2 terms or 4 terms or let's say, or 8 terms, when they've served all their time they can in the Colorado House and then all the time they can in the Colorado Senate, and they're loading up out of their desk drawers, and a lot of them have just dropped these in a file, and they'll say, "Oh, I'll read it later," or whatever. Well, we've had legislators say, "Well, after 16 years in the Capitol, and I didn't have time to cut out all those clips of all those newspaper stories I was in, but I'd sure like for my kids and my grandkids to see them sometime. So I've taken all of your note cards and put them into a scrapbook for my grandkids." So, of course, what we're doing with the association on doing that is just building goodwill and friendship and recognition. And these are issues not related to us, just related to what they do. And, of course, we can do the same kind of note card on the news story with a member as well. But we do a lot of those, and so we personalize communications. And I really think from a standpoint, and I'll jump into this and don't want to take the conversation off track, but I'll throw it out there anyway, that one of the most important things we do as association executives, association leaders, is communicate a message. It's one thing to do something, but it's something else to tell your members that you did it and how you did it and why you did it and what their role and what it means for them that you did it. So it's there's a lot of storytelling potential there, and we put that out in a number of different communication tools. We still have the printed word, the printed newsletter. We have electronic newsletters. We have video newsletters. We have text alerts where we can mass text a number. And I have actually will take my phone, because a lot of times our members will respond to me better than or quicker than they'll respond to somebody they don't know. And I'll hand my phone off to somebody and say, "Here, text these 120 people or 200 people, text the same message, just personalize it in each one." And you'd be surprised at how much more, let's say, impact or how much better results we get when we do it that way versus just sending them a blast email or a blast printed word. We still fax to members, and some people say, "Well, isn't the fax," I mean, people joke about a fax being out of date. One thing about a fax is when a fax comes in, if it's a personalized fax or something really important to somebody, they'll bring it in and put it on my chair. So I'll get my mail stacked 6 inches deep, but I'll get my emails after I've been gone to lunch, 40, 50, 60 of them in my inbox. But when I get a fax, it's hand carried into me and put on my chair. And so I come in and I say, "Well, that must be important because they carried it in."
Yeah.
So and then we'll actually dial our members, and for us, it's dialing for dealers. You've heard of dialing for dollars. We're dialing for dealers, but it's really to connect with them and make sure they know something's important out there and going on, and here's what it is.
So the personal touch, I mean, and oh, by the way, a little side note here, I still want that secret tactic regarding the cards, but we'll get back to that in a second.
Yeah, we didn't cover that.
Yeah, no, we'll get back to that just 1 second. But I think that when I hear stories as you're talking about, and I hear these more at the state level than at the national level, but I'm always impressed with the state CEOs that care enough, that have the ability to take the time to really know their members, reach out to their members, and touch their members. And it appears that in addition to being the employee of the association, you're really their friend.
Right.
I mean, and I think that not every association exec understands that in addition to, running the office and running the association, most of your members want to get to know you, want to have some contact from you. And
well, and that's really spot on. That is spot on. And I can do a quick takeoff on that. Some of my best friends in life are people that I've served with, is from elected leader to chief staff leader. The very first chairman I worked with now 32 years ago is still operating in the same business that he was operating 32 years ago. It was a different association by far. It was a very political organization, but he's still a friend of mine. The number two association chair that I worked with is in a different related business, and now he wasn't in automotive then, and I wasn't either, and now we both are, and now we both interact in automotive. So bottom line, some of my best friends in life are those that I have worked with in the past as an association leader. I think it's an excellent point, and I value those friendships and those relationships, and they last forever.
And I think the other people value them too, don't they?
Yeah, I think so. I think people see that, and they see those relationships, and maybe they don't have time to build that type of relationship, but they do see it and they value it.
So Tim, let's get back to that secret tip or tactic that you have for. I think that you said in conjunction with the cards.
Yes. So we bought a machine, and this is the secret sauce. I guess the secret sauce, or the way we can expedite the 90% of the cards we do are personalized, just specific to this individual and maybe their service on the board or whatever. But let's say we have an upcoming meeting coming up, and we really need to get the attention of 260 leaders in those 260 rooftops. I can write a note like this one I wrote just while we've been on here. Hi, Ed. It's great to be on your show, on your program today.
Okay.
Tim, can you see that?
Yeah, I can.
And only doesn't say hi, Ed. So now I can go digitally duplicate that, and I can say, now I'd have to be on a lot of shows to make this work, but let's say Sue has a show. I could just digitally duplicate it, come back through, and write Sue on the top of it.
Raise it up a little bit. Raise it up. There we go. Okay. Okay. So you can digitally print, and then you just write the person's name above, and the ink
with the same pen and the same black ink. And then, and that's not digitally duplicated. That's just handwritten. But it is still a personalized, handwritten note. It just happens to be mass produced.
Son of a gun. So it doesn't look like, there's a company out there called Send Out Cards. It's kind of a multi-level marketing company. And,
I've used them. I like them.
I get those periodically, but I know that that's just somebody goes in and types in whatever they want and it's sent to me. But this one is kind of cool because it appears on first glance that you wrote the whole note.
Well, it does appear, and even on second and third glance.
Yeah. Wow.
I've had people out there that say, wow, because we have staff people go in and call on the members in their offices, and they'll say, look, Tim sent me this note card, and if it was important enough to send, I think it's important enough to be there. And in truth and in reality, I mean, I did personalize it, and I did send it to him, and it is handwritten, but I mass produced it to him and 259 others, and then wrote the name in, the first name in at the top. I've done that. I was with an association that literally had 12,000 members in Colorado, and I was the state director for that group. And I did 12,000 personalized, mass-produced, handwritten note cards.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Holy cow. How did you do 12,000?
Yeah, I did 12,000 of them. I sent the 12,000 note cards out to a publisher, and who printed and just reproduced them without the names. And then I came back through and took the envelope and wrote the first name in. And usually if it's Michael, it's Mike, or if it's Robert, it's Bob, and and a lot of them I did know. Not all of them I did know, but I took the chance on getting the first name right. If it was other than what it looked like it should
Yeah.
be.
Wow. How long does it take to write 12,000 first names?
That was about a 2.5 or 3 day project.
No kidding. Holy
Yeah.
cow. Holy cow.
As they say in association business, it's a labor of love, right?
Yes, yes. That's amazing. So, Tim, let me ask you before we close this show out, just I would kind of like to leave a little bit of an open forum to you. You've been in this business a long time. You've been very successful as a CEO. For other CEOs maybe that are maybe a little bit younger, working their way up, maybe have their first assignment, what would you tell these people?
Well, first I have to ask you, do I look like I'm not young? I mean, come on. Is the gray hair tipping me over into the older set? But
Okay, so are we going to go there now? Look at who has less hair. It's
yeah,
not you.
yeah. So no, I get what you're saying. If I think it's really a great inquiry, and it's something that, from a mentoring standpoint or assistant standpoint, you want to be as helpful as you can. And my message would be personalize to the extent you can personalize. Don't. I know other state and national associations, and we won't name names or anything here, that have gone to completely electronic communications and no printed communications. And I think they lose a lot of some of us are print readers, some of us are electronic readers, some will read it however you send it to us. But if you only do it in a certain way, you're losing some of your audience. And so that's the first thing I would say. Second, and this is something specific to what we've done here, without a doubt, but it would be applicable to many other associations, and I would say all others that have advocacy as a role, as a priority, and that is the legislative grassroots meetings. When you can put that legislator, that policymaker, whether it's a member of Congress, or so it'll work on national associations, or a state representative or state senator, at a table in their hometown over breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and have that conversation. And these, by the way, I'm going to lean back a little here, are lean back conversations. They're not lean forward conversations. They're, let me tell you about my business and why this is important. I've got to have your vote on this bill tomorrow. You have to vote my way. With blood pressure, blood vessels protruding out of the forehead and stuff like that. That doesn't win votes, by the way. You might as well have not done it. It doesn't win votes. It might scare somebody, but it doesn't win votes. What does win votes is when you build a relationship. You build that connectivity. You build that understanding. You build that, you diffuse myths. And by the way, every industry there's myths, public myths about the industry. Like about ours, dealers, make thousands of dollars on every car that they sell. Actually, the myth is that they make money on the car, the sale of the car. We don't make any money on the sale of the car. We make money on the financing if we finance it, on the used car if there's a used car, on the parts and service. We're operating on a 1.5% to 2.5% margin of profit, and we actually lose money on every sale. Most people don't realize that.
Now, does that hold on? Does that include the holdbacks?
That includes the holdbacks because it goes into that department. So let me put it another way. Yeah, let me put it another way. If I could line up the financials for all 260 of our new car dealers, and because of antitrust laws, we wouldn't be able to do that. But if I could, 95% of those would be in the red in the new car department, and deep in the red, yeah. But they'd be in the black in the used car department. They'd be in the black in the F&I, the finance department. They'd be in the black in the parts and service, and enough in the black in those 4 departments to wipe out the red and turn it to black for the company for the month at about 1.5%. So like a loss leader in a grocery store might be the romaine noodles or the mac and cheese or the milk.
Yeah.
But the loss leader in a new car store is none other than the new car itself.
Really?
Yes.
Son of a gun. That's it.
And I'll tell you how one dealer told me, one member told me, we're standing in his used car department in the lot, the open lot with all the used cars. And he looks up at the Nissan sign and he said, Tim, the only reason I need to be a franchise dealer and have that sign, which was hanging over the new car department, is so I can get more of these cars because I'll make money on every one of these I sell, but I'll lose money on every one of those I sell. And then it's my job to make more on these and I lose on those so it can be black at the end of the month.
Really? Son of a gun.
Yeah.
Well,
So, but just like it was an educational experience for you just to hear that conversation, but legislators get to hear that, and they need to hear that because they need to know, hey, it's not what I thought. It's not like I thought. Or that new car dealers don't want to sell electric cars. And we love to sell electric cars. Just right now, consumers aren't real big on buying them. They're getting better on that. And but that's another myth. So we won't get into too many myths here. But back to your question, for the novices association manager or the entrant into our profession, I would say, hey, spend as much time with each of your members so that you can learn their business and learn their challenges, because for you to effectively communicate it over here at the Capitol, you need to know it over here in their business. And so get to know that so you can effectively communicate it. And then don't be afraid to bring those member dealers for us, but those members to that conversation so they can communicate it directly. And the association itself is still the pivot point. We're the organizer, if you will, of the conversation. We're the instigator and implementer of the conversation, but the conversation still is had between you and the entity.
well, and just to add something to that I'd never heard the term a lean forward or a lean back conversation. I know exactly what you're talking about. I just never heard that before. And so that's pretty cool. I would.
You understood it though, right?
Yeah, no, I would say though that maybe some of the magic that you didn't even talk about just this last minute is that you get your members there, but teach them how to do lean back conversation.
Well, and for us, that becomes a little bit of a natural because they're used to selling cars, and they can't sell cars leaning forward. They have to sell cars leaning back. But many of them are experienced in the sale of the car,
okay,
communicating why this is the vehicle you need, no pun intended. So we're communicating why this is the bill you need, and but you do it in a casual and relaxing way instead of a lean forward. You have to do this because you don't have to buy that car as much as I want you to buy that car. I can't make you buy that car, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh no, it's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, as we've had this interview, I've been thinking, should I ask you about Tesla dealers? And I thought, no, I shouldn't.
You can. I spent an hour on the issue the other day.
Did
so
you?
Tesla doesn't have dealers, so they have outlets, and they deliver cars the way our dealers deliver cars. We don't like that model because it takes the dealer out of the equation. But more importantly, we don't think it's the best for the consumers because there aren't nearly as many service centers for the repair and service or training and delivery as there are on all the other brands. And here in Colorado, there's just one retail location and one service center. So so that's why we don't like it. But it is out there, and it's a competitor. And so we just look at it as, well, we need to communicate why this model is better for the consumer.
Got it. Yeah, there's only one Tesla repair in Colorado?
Yep.
Really? Son of a gun. Yeah, it's interesting. Here in California, in Ventura County where I live, I was just over at a country club for lunch yesterday, and it's like 10 Teslas in a row.
Yeah. It's ubiquitous out there, right? So, yeah. In Denver, they're a lot more commonplace than they are. Here's the funny thing, just to that point, I won't belabor this or anything, but I watch it from an ongoing basis. In Denver, where we office and where I live, in downtown Denver, there's a lot more Teslas here by percentage than there is in rural Colorado. That probably doesn't surprise you.
Yeah.
But in Boulder County, think of Boulder County as the Berkeley of Colorado, like Berkeley, California is to California, is Boulder in Colorado. The, let's say, more left-leaning and green-oriented audience. So out of the 23,000 electric cars, that's not just Tesla, but all electric cars that have been sold in the state through the end of 2018, about half of those, or 55%, are Teslas. But 5,400 of the 23,000 have gone into that one county.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where we have counties in rural Colorado, about a third of them statewide, that don't have their first electric car.
No.
So it's either the feast or famine. Electric car of any kind, Tesla or Volt or i3 or iPace or e-tron or anything else. So so it's kind of like the old adage, feast or famine. So in Denver, I can't drive 10 blocks without seeing a Tesla on the road, but in western Colorado, I can drive 100 miles and not see a Tesla on the road.
Well, you know, Tim, probably to your delight, I still love my Subaru all-wheel drive for going to Mammoth all winter and going skiing, because
it's a great car, isn't it?
I want to be in a Tesla going up to Mammoth.
Yeah, the Subaru, by the way, is very popular in Colorado. It outperforms this market about 3-to-1 compared to the national market. So as volume brands go, it's Toyota #1, Subaru #2, and Ford #3. And it used to be in reverse: Ford, Toyota, and Subaru. And now it's Toyota, Subaru, and Ford.
So Subaru's gone up to second place. That's fascinating.
Yeah, in Colorado, yes.
I would have never guessed that. I mean, probably, I don't know how interesting this is to people that are listening to the show, because my in-laws used to live in Vail, and back then in the 80s, the Saabs with the front wheel drive, the turbo Saabs were the Vail Police Department cars, and they pretty well in the snow as a sedan. I guess as good as a sedan would perform in the snow. But I didn't realize that Subaru was so popular in Colorado. Well,
yep, very popular.
Well, hey, Tim, I'm going to let you go. This was amazing. I really appreciate you sharing your insight. Congratulations. Yeah, congratulations on the 100% of your market. And, you're a rock star out there. So thank you very much.
Thanks. I don't know about that, but I work at it every day.
Okay.
I respect you and all of the things you do. I just get a lot out of what you do, and I'd like to be around you more.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Thanks so much. Bye now.
Bye-bye.